For more than half a century, Paul Anka has been known to the world as a musical genius, a romantic songwriter, and one of the most influential voices in pop music history. From writing timeless classics like Diana and Put Your Head on My Shoulder to composing the legendary English lyrics for Frank Sinatra's My Way, Anka's public image has always been polished, charismatic, and larger than life. But behind the bright stage lights and glamorous reputation, a much more complex story quietly unfolded, one that many fans are only beginning to understand now. For nearly 30 years, Paul Anka balanced two very different worlds. On the surface, he was the perfect entertainer, charming, disciplined, and relentlessly dedicated to his craft. He toured internationally, collaborated with icons, and maintained a reputation as a consummate professional. Yet behind closed doors, Anka's personal life was far more complicated than his public persona suggested. The pressure to remain a global star while managing private struggles created a hidden emotional world that few people ever saw. One of the most significant aspects of Anka's double life was the tension between fame and family. While he built a legendary career, he was also a husband and father trying to maintain stability in a world defined by constant travel and public scrutiny. Those close to him have hinted that his personal relationships often suffered under the weight of his ambition. Maintaining intimacy and normalcy while living in the spotlight required sacrifices that Anka rarely discussed publicly. Over time, the strain began to show. His marriage eventually ended in a high-profile divorce, revealing glimpses of the private struggles he had kept hidden for decades. What shocked many fans was not the divorce itself but the emotional depth of the conflict. It became clear that Anka had spent years carefully separating his public identity from his personal reality, shielding his family life from the chaos of fame. But the double life went beyond relationships. Anka also carried the burden of constant reinvention. As musical trends shifted, he faced the challenge of staying relevant while preserving his artistic identity. Behind his confident exterior was an artist wrestling with fear, the fear of becoming irrelevant, forgotten, or misunderstood. While audiences saw a man who seemed eternally confident, Anka privately questioned his place in an industry that constantly favored youth and novelty. Adding to this complexity was his role as a behind-the-scenes creator. Many people admired Anka as a performer but underestimated his influence as a songwriter and producer. He often worked quietly, shaping the careers of others while suppressing his own frustrations and creative ambitions. This hidden side of his life, a relentless drive to control his artistic legacy, was rarely visible to the public. What makes Anka's story particularly striking is how successfully he maintained this dual existence. Unlike many celebrities whose private scandals become public spectacles, Anka managed to keep his struggles largely out of the spotlight for decades. He understood the power of image and carefully curated his public persona, presenting himself as calm, elegant, and unshakable. Only in recent years has the truth begun to surface more clearly. Through interviews and reflections, Anka has hinted at the emotional cost of his success. He has spoken about loneliness, pressure, and the sacrifices required to sustain a global career. These revelations have reshaped how fans view him, not just as a legendary entertainer but as a human being who paid a heavy price for greatness. His story is a reminder that fame often demands a kind of emotional compartmentalization. For Anka, living a double life was not about scandal or deception in the traditional sense but about survival. He had to protect his private self from the relentless demands of public life, creating a barrier between who he was on stage and who he was at home. Today, as fans revisit his music with new understanding, Paul Anka's legacy appears deeper and more poignant. His songs, once seen as simple expressions of romance and nostalgia, now feel like emotional confessions from a man who rarely revealed his true self in words. The discovery of his hidden struggles does not diminish his achievements, it humanizes them. In the end, Paul Anka's double life was not a secret meant to shock but a reality shaped by the impossible expectations placed on icons. For 30 years, he carried the weight of fame with grace and silence. And now, as the truth slowly emerges, his story stands as one of resilience, sacrifice, and the quiet loneliness that often hides behind legendary success.